family's home and disappeared into the frozen desert nearby. The night before, KARLIE had gone to a party with her boyfriend and some friends. She had smoked marijuana, which triggered such an intense paranoia response that her father and stepmother suspected it was laced with something. Then, though her loved ones managed to get her home and into bed, she slipped out the door. She hasn't been seen since. "We will not give up on KARLIE," FBI Special Agent in Charge Sean Reagan said of the ongoing case. "People don't disappear into thin air." Born on May 13th of 2002, KARLIE Guse had a fairly typical life until her disappearance. Her parents divorced when she was 2 years old, and after initially living with her mother, Lindsay Fairley, KARLIE moved to live with her father, Zachary, and his wife, Melissa, in Bishop, California. She was described by classmates at Bishop Union High School as sweet and quiet, according to a 2019 Fox News report. She was well liked in school, and to most people who knew her, there were no obvious signs that anything might have been troubling her. In retrospect, however, there were some potentially concerning things about KARLIE Guse's life in the weeks before she vanished. For starters, she had had a couple of adverse reactions to smoking marijuana, and KARLIE had purportedly shown signs of paranoia, telling friends she was worried about being tracked on her phone. Still, everything seemed normal on the night of October 12th of 2018. Then she attended a small party with her boyfriend, Donald Arrowwood III. But around 8 p.m., things took an alarming turn. On the last night KARLIE Guse was seen alive, she called her stepmother in a panic and asked to be picked up from the party. She had smoked marijuana and apparently had had an adverse reaction. Arrowwood later recalled that she became frightened of the music and frightened of him. "She was frantic," Melissa Guse later recalled to the Las Vegas Review-Journal. "She wanted me to pick her up." Melissa came to get her stepdaughter, only to find that KARLIE had already fled the party. The 16-year-old was running down a dark lane and continued to act paranoid even after Melissa got her into the car. According to Fox News, she repeatedly told Melissa she was scared, changed seats within the vehicle multiple times, and fretted that the car would kill her. Once she got home, KARLIE seemed so paranoid that her father suspected that the marijuana she had smoked had been laced with another drug. He and Melissa recorded their conversation with KARLIE in hopes of showing her the next day how drugs could be dangerous. The 8-minute 45-second recorded conversation is evidence of how deeply paranoid KARLIE was that night. "I really messed up today," KARLIE says at one point, to which Melissa responds, "We all do things in life that we regret, drugs especially." At another point, KARLIE accuses her stepmother of wanting to kill her. When Melissa tells her that's preposterous, KARLIE responds through sobs, "I'm just thinking all this demonic stuff. I can't help it." As SF Gate reported in 2021, the timeline from the this moment on gets a bit unclear. Initially, Melissa told the media that she had checked on KARLIE at 5:45 a.m. When she returned at 7:15 a.m., the girl was gone. Later, Melissa amended this account, saying that she actually spent the entire night in KARLIE's room. When she woke up around 7 a.m., KARLIE was no longer in her bed. When they realized that KARLIE GUSE was missing, Zachary and Melissa immediately searched their home and the surrounding neighborhood. After 2 hours of searching, Zachary told his ex-wife what had happened and filed a missing persons report with the Mono County Sheriff's Office. Investigators soon arrived on the scene and began to look for the missing teenager. Promisingly, they found a handful of witnesses who had seen her that morning. The first witness, who lived near the Guses, had seen her walking with a piece of paper in her hand, looking at the sky. Another spotted her walking toward Highway 6 and also noted that she had a piece of paper in her hand. The third and final witness saw her standing near some sagebrush near the highway, which is where the search dogs lost her scent. After that, the trail went cold. So what happened to KARLIE GUSE? It's possible she perished in the desert, where the mornings can be freezing cold and the days swelteringly hot. KARLIE was wearing sweatpants or jeans, a white t-shirt, and Vans when she disappeared. She could very well have wandered deep into the desert where no one could find her and died of exposure. Some theories suggest that someone may have picked her up as she walked along the road. Others have pointed the finger at Melissa GUSE because of how her story has changed. In fact, KARLIE's mother, Lindsay Fairley, suggested in 2019 that KARLIE may have died of an overdose and that Melissa and Zachary had hidden the evidence. However, the couple have been cleared by a polygraph test. Police reportedly found no evidence that Melissa and Zachary GUSE had anything to do with KARLIE's disappearance. To date, no one knows for sure what happened to KARLIE GUSE. It seems that, racked with paranoia and fear, she walked out of her home on that October morning and vanished into thin air. My whole body and soul, I'd give it all up, her father Zachary told the FBI in an interview, just to have her home safe. Reena Virk was a victim of bullying who desperately wanted to fit in with her small-town Canadian peers. Then, a mob of them beat and killed her in a horrific swarming attack. On November 14th of 1997, 14-year-old Reena Virk was beaten and killed by a group of her teenage peers. That night, 7 girls and 1 boy between the ages of 14 and 16 cornered Virk beneath a bridge in Victoria, British Columbia, and accused her of trying to steal one of the girls' boyfriends. accused, Reena Virk nearly escaped with her life, staggering away across the bridge. But two of her assailants, Warren Glowatsky and Kelly Ellard, followed her and continued the beating, knocking her unconscious. They dragged her body to the edge of the gorge waterway and drowned her. 8 days later, Reena Virk's body was found in the inlet. Her injuries were so severe that the pathologist who examined her determined she would have likely died even if she had not been drowned. Nearly 3 decades later, Reena Virk's story is being given new attention, thanks in part to the Hulu series Under the Bridge, raising questions about race, bullying, and the desire to feel accepted. Reena Virk was born on March 10th of 1983 to Suman and Manjeet Virk. Manjeet had immigrated to Canada from India, while Suman came from an Indo-Canadian family. But unlike other South Asian families in the community, they were not practicing Sikhs. Instead, Suman's family had converted to the Jehovah's Witnesses after moving to Canada, and Manjeet later made the same transition. Various reports describe the family as a minority within a minority, and Reena grew up feeling like an outsider. She also despised her parents' strict rules and made several attempts to run away from home. In part, she was motivated by a desperation to fit in among her predominantly white peers who were reportedly influenced by Los Angeles gang culture. But Reena Virk's desperate struggle to fit in was only made worse by the bullying she suffered. Her peers allegedly mocked her relentlessly for her weight and for being different. This caused her to take extreme measures to escape what she felt was an oppressive home. In 1996, she falsely accused her father of sexually molesting her. This accusation led to Reena being placed for a few months in a foster home while her father was scrutinized by investigators. Reena reportedly dropped the charges, and her claims were found to be groundless. But as the CBC reported in 2006, her parents believed that if social workers had been more thorough in their investigation and Reena had not been placed in foster care, she might never have met her killers in the first place. Unfortunately, there was no way to change what happened. On November 14th of 1997, Reena Virk was invited to a party in a field behind the Shoreline School in View Royale. Police arrived to break up the party, however, and the group quickly moved to a spot near the Crayflower Bridge to drink and smoke. But the party quickly turned into a nightmare for Virk. As a small crowd watched, one girl, Nicole Cook, approached Virk and put out a lit cigarette on her forehead. She went on to berate Virk, accusing her of spreading rumors about her and trying to steal her boyfriend. 8 teens gathered around Virk, viciously punching and kicking her and burning her skin with cigarettes. As she lay on the ground bearing the brunt of this some stayed and continued to watch. Eventually, one teen called out for the others to stop, and it seemed as if this violent attack had come to an end. But as Reena Virk staggered, bloody and beaten, across the bridge, she was approached again by two of her assailants, 15-year-old Kelly Ellard and 16-year-old Warren Glowatsky. Ellard and Glowatsky once again started attacking Virk, punching her and bashing her head off of a tree. Virk lost consciousness, and Ellard and Glowatsky dragged her body to the edge of the gorge. There, Ellard allegedly held Virk's head underwater, drowning her. Although Ellard later denied this, she did admit to rolling Virk's unconscious body into the water. Reena Virk's parents reported her missing after she didn't return home from the party that night. But it wouldn't be for another 8 days that her partially clothed body was finally found floating in the gorge. An autopsy report detailed extensive damage to Virk's body, multiple severe blows to the abdomen, bruising all over her face, a sneaker-shaped bruise on the back of her head, and swelling in her brain. The coroner ultimately concluding that Reena would have likely died from her injuries had she not been drowned. Now the question for investigators was, who had killed Reena Virk and why? It didn't take long for some of the teens who attended the party under the bridge to report the swarming attack they had witnessed. By the end of the month, all 8 of Reena Virk's attackers were arrested. In total, 7 of them were prosecuted in relation to Virk's murder. They were Nicole Cook, Nicole Patterson, Missy Grace Bleich, Courtney Keith, Gail Ooms, Kelly Ellard, and Warren Glowatsky. 6 of the girls were convicted of assault causing bodily harm and sentenced to up to 1 year in custody, but only Ellard and Glowatsky were charged with Virk's murder. Warren Glowatsky had a troubled home life. His mother was an alcoholic, and his father had left and moved alone to California, leaving Warren behind. At the time of Virk's murder, he was living with a friend. It's not clear why exactly he had involved himself in the initial assault on Virk, or why he joined Ellard in the second attack. He was ultimately convicted of second-degree murder in 1999 and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 7 years. His first request in 2004 was denied. Kelly Ellard, meanwhile, came from a relatively stable, traditional family, though her parents were reportedly divorced. Again, it's not entirely clear why she initially attacked Virk, though some, such as the academic activist Yasmin Jawani, have argued racism may have played a part. At her first trial in 2000, Ellard was found guilty of second-degree murder. However, the Supreme Court of Canada later overturned that decision on technical legal grounds. A second trial in 2004 resulted in a deadlocked jury and a mistrial. At this trial, Ellard insisted she was innocent, telling juries, "I am not a monster. according to a 2017 Vice article. In 2005, however, a third trial saw Ellard convicted. She was sentenced to life in prison. In the wake of their daughter's gruesome murder, Suman and Manjeet Virk became prominent anti-bullying advocates, successfully pushing the government of British Columbia to create a number of anti-bullying programs in schools. In 2009, they were even honored with British Columbia's Anthony J. Holm Award of Distinction for their efforts. While incarcerated, Warren Glowatsky showed deep remorse for killing Virk. He also discovered that he was of the Métis heritage, a person of mixed European and indigenous ancestry, which helped guide his rehabilitation. Eventually, his work toward healing led him to meet with Suman and Manjeet Virk to apologize in person. Surprisingly, the Virks forgave him, telling the Globe and Mail, "I think the most important reason why we've forgiven Warren is so we can just put this whole matter aside and for our own healing and sense of wholeness." In 2010, Warren Glowatsky was fully paroled, a decision which the Virks supported. Kelly Ellard, meanwhile, continued to proclaim her innocence in prison. During this time, she also smuggled in illegal drugs and broke numerous penitentiary rules. She was given conditional day parole in 2017, which was then extended multiple times in the subsequent years. It was also revealed that she had changed her name to Carrie Marie Sim, and that she had given birth to a child conceived during a conjugal visit with her boyfriend. They had a second child in 2020. Then, Sim's day parole was suspended in August of 2021 because she failed to report an incident of domestic violence, though this suspension was canceled in October of that same year. The parole board also deemed her to be of a moderate to high moderate risk of reoffending. In 2022, Sim waived her right to another parole hearing, saying that she did not believe she was ready to return to society. Now, the murder of Reena Virk has been dramatized in the Hulu miniseries Under the Bridge, starring Lily Gladstone and Riley Keough. The series will explore the culture of bullying that contributed to Virk's tragic death. On the afternoon of July 26th of 2009, Diane Schuler sped the wrong way on the Taconic State Parkway and crashed into another car, killing 8 people. It was 12:58 on the afternoon of July 26th, 2009. Warren Hance received a phone call. His 36-year-old sister, Diane Schuler's number appeared on the caller ID, but when he answered, his own young daughter was on the line. Hance listened intently as his worried 8-year-old Emma explained that Aunt Diane was having trouble seeing while driving and wasn't speaking clearly. Diane Schuler herself then got on the phone and described being disoriented, her vision foggy. Panicked, Hance told Schuler to pull over and stay the time he arrived at the scene, Schuler had left and tragedy was on the horizon. In 1934, a bus on its way from Brooklyn to Sing Sing Prison in Ossining, New York, drove off an embankment and plunged into a ravine. The bus was instantly engulfed in flames, ultimately resulting in the loss of 20 lives. For the next 75 years, almost to the day, this tragedy would be Westchester County's worst automobile accident, one that the population hoped they'd never come close to again, until Diane Schuler came along. Schuler had begun her day with seemingly good intentions. She and her husband Daniel had been camping for the weekend with their children and nieces at the Hunter Lake campground in Parksville, New York. They prepared the family to head home to West Babylon on that late July day. Around 9:30 a.m., Diane, along with her 5-year-old son Brian, her 2-year-old daughter Erin, and her 3 nieces, 8-year-old Emma, 7-year-old Allison, and 5-year-old Kate, left the camp. They piled into her brother Warren's red 2004 Ford Windstar minivan, while her husband Daniel followed behind in a truck with the family dog. Along the route home, the minivan party participated in several road trip rituals, stopping at McDonald's and several gas stations. So far, it seemed just as it was, a typical New York family heading home after a camping trip. Around 11 a.m., however, the trouble started. As Diane Schuler was making her way down the New York Thruway, she called her brother Warren to tell him they were being delayed as traffic in the area was heavy. However, at the same time that Diane was reporting heavy traffic, other motorists on the NY Thruway were reporting a different series of events. According to several eyewitnesses, a minivan was driving aggressively on the highway, tailgating, flashing their headlights, honking their horn, and straddling 2 lanes. Other witnesses reported seeing a minivan pulled over on the side of the highway with a woman bent over next to it who appeared to be vomiting. 2 hours later, Warren Hance would receive his daughter's worried phone call. The specifics of what happened in Diane Schuler's car after the phone call are unknown and have been pieced together through witness accounts and toll information. Shortly after placing the call to Hance, Schuler made it across the Tappan Zee Bridge and onto the Taconic State Parkway. For reasons unknown, or perhaps unintentionally, Schuler then left her phone on the side of the highway and drove off. At 1:33 p.m., 911 operators received 2 separate calls reporting a minivan driving the wrong way up an exit ramp on the Taconic State Parkway. 1 minute later, 911 operators received 4 more calls, this time reporting a similar van driving the wrong way down the parkway at 80 miles per hour. The van was indeed Schuler's. For 1.7 miles, it erratically sped south down the northbound lanes of the Taconic State Parkway before colliding head-on with a Chevrolet Trailblazer, which subsequently collided with a Chevrolet Tracker at 1:35 p.m. The entire event took less than 3 minutes. 7 of the 11 people involved in the crash were pronounced dead at the scene. 1 would later die at the hospital, bringing the total number of fatalities to 8. Diane Schuler, her daughter, and 2 3 passengers of the Trailblazer, 81-year-old Michael Bastardi, his 49-year-old son Guy, and their friend 74-year-old Dan Longo, were also likely killed on impact. The 2 passengers in the tracker received only minor injuries. Schuler's 5-year-old son Brian and one of her nieces initially survived the crash and were taken to a local hospital. Though he suffered from severe head trauma and several broken bones, Brian would ultimately survive his ordeal. Unfortunately, the niece would not. Of those that responded to the crash, the first 2 were fellow drivers who had witnessed the ordeal. As soon as they saw what had happened, they rushed to help, pulling Schuler and her kids out of the van. They almost missed Brian, as he was under his siblings and cousins. As they pulled Diane Schuler out, they reported seeing a large bottle of Absolute vodka broken on the floor of the driver's side, a report that would be taken into account when the medical examiner performed his autopsy. The following investigation determined that Diane Schuler was heavily intoxicated during the time of the crash. Her toxicology report showed that her blood alcohol level was at 0.19%, over double the legal limit of 0.08%, with another 6 grams of alcohol sitting in her stomach yet to be absorbed. In addition to being drunk, Schuler also had high levels of THC in her system, enough to suggest she could have smoked marijuana as recently as 15 minutes before the crash. Investigators noted that the toxicology report lined up with the vodka bottle found at the scene. It also explained the handful of witnesses who had reported seeing Schuler driving erratically, those claiming to see a woman vomiting on the side of the road, and the daughter's phone call claiming Schuler was having trouble seeing and thinking clearly. Diane Schuler's family, however, denied all allegations of intoxication, and several people Schuler had interacted with over the course of the morning backed up the family's claims. Unless you believe that a woman who's like a PTA Mom of the Year decides this is the day I don't give a damn, I'm going to have 8 or 10 shots and smoke a joint in front of my kids and nieces, then something else had to happen, said Daniel Schuler's private investigator. The Hunter Lake Campground co-owner, who was also a friend of the Schulers, spoke with Diane before she departed and claimed that she appeared sober. A gas station employee from whom Diane Schuler had attempted to buy over-the-counter painkillers vigorously denied that she had been drunk. I know for a fact she wasn't drunk when she came into the station, he said in a news report. She was fine, but she did ask for Tylenol. Schuler did not end up purchasing the painkiller, as the station was sold out of it. Then it was thought that Schuler may have had an abscessed tooth, as she had been rubbing her cheek, although she hadn't complained of pain. The McDonald's employees also denied that Schuler was intoxicated, and in fact reported she carried on a coherent and lengthy conversation while she waited for her order. Over the course of the investigation, Daniel Schuler eased up on his initial claims that his wife never drank during their camping weekend. He ultimately admitted that there had been drinking during the weekend, but that Diane had not had anything to drink during the day prior to the accident. Daniel also revealed that his wife smoked marijuana occasionally, but never to excess, and only for insomnia. But later reports revealed a statement made by Daniel's sister that claimed she smoked on a regular basis. In an attempt to prove that his wife had not been intoxicated, Daniel Schuler and his attorney issued a statement that claimed Diane Schuler had been driving erratically due to a medical issue, such as a stroke, rather than intoxication. They even suggested she could have had an embolism or a heart attack, though all claims of medical issues were refuted by the autopsy report. Eventually, despite the Schulers' team efforts, investigators ruled the crash a homicide after claiming the deaths were caused by negligent driving. Due to the crash and the publicity of it, the governor of New York, David Patterson, proposed the child passenger